Yo guys, what's going on, and welcome back to a brand new video on HMSB News, where today we are going to be taking a look ahead at the 2019 World Superbike season. I'm joined today by Eurosport World Superbike commentator and Motorcycle News World Superbike correspondent, Greg Haines. Greg, thanks for joining us. It's nice to have you.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Nice to have you on the channel.
Thanks for inviting me onto the channel. It was very kind to do.
You can follow Greg. I'll put all the links down in the description, and you can see them on the overlay that we've got on the screen. And also add links are down in the description as well. So as I mentioned to you before, Greg, we're going to talk about 2018 really quickly, because it was, from the outside in, it was a better season than people would have thought if you just looked at the headlines.
Yeah, we were speaking about this just before we came on air, weren't we, Ryan? And the fact that if anyone just read the headlines that we're writing and other people are writing, you would just think that it's Jonathan Rea walkover. And in a sense, it was, wasn't it, last year in World Superbikes in the championship? But there was some tremendous racing along the way. And we obviously had 2 races per weekend last year, 3 this year. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But there has been some very, very competitive race in the last few years. But as ever, if you don't actually watch live, and in this day and age, people aren't watching live quite as much, it's more on demand, it would fool you into thinking that there have been pretty dominant races. I describe them as predictable, but not processional.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Obviously, back at Donington Park, when Yamaha obviously won 2 races, then Alex Lowe's at Brno, and then we also had Toprak on the podium.
We did.
Forres was leading at Aragon before he dropped it. So, like I say, it was good racing. But at the end of the day, looking at the championship standings, it was the Jonathan Rea show once again for title number 4. So,
yeah, if you actually look at the statistics, we had, I can't remember the exact number now, but I think it was 12, 13 race leaders.
Yeah.
So anyone who'd actually led a lap over the finish line in a race during the year. But yeah, it's always Perariba, Jonathan Rea's crew chief, Ryan. He always says, how many laps is the race? And, you know, it might be 22. And he said, it's not 18, it's not 19, it's 22. And that he basically means by that, we often see other people at the front, don't we, earlier on in the race. Yeah. But it's all about that second half, tyre life and everything else. That's why it's so important, if you can, to get a race distance in over the practice sessions and also in testing. And one thing this preseason has been characterised by, actually, I would say, generally, is a lack of race distances and race simulations. That's why the Phillip Island test coming up before the round will be absolutely critical as ever.
Yeah, exactly. Going into 2019, there's been a few changes, as you mentioned earlier. 3 races per weekend. You've got your 2 feature race, which will be on a Saturday and a Sunday like last year. And then you've got a sprint race on a Sunday morning. I'm not sure what your views are, but I'm not sure if the sprint race is really necessary. It's just something different, but I don't know what your views on that is.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, when these folders are updated by the end of the next few days, at the moment they're empty, look, but when they are both done for Supersport and Superbike, I'm going to have a bit of a redesign, I think, this year, Ryan, because all my documents are like in columns for 2 races. So everything's going to have to be moved all over the place and reformatted. So that's the first thing. That was very inconsiderate, I feel, by the championship organisers for that reason alone. But no, joking aside. I don't know. There's mixed opinion. There's no doubt about that. I think 2 races is the Superbike traditional format. Dorna decided to do something different back in 2016 and went for 1 race on a Saturday, 1 on a Sunday. A few people have kicked off about that, as we know. Some people don't mind. Some people like the idea. Some people certainly don't like the idea. You know, I think it was important to get 2 races back on a Sunday, because that's what World Superbikes has always been about. And then again, you can't always say that, you know, history should guarantee the past, or what's gone before is what should come later. It doesn't always work like that in life anyway, does it? However, I think it is important that we have 2 races on a Sunday, because some people, quite honestly, don't have the time. They work on a Saturday. They can't get to the circuit. They can't afford to pay for an overnight hotel, or don't want to pay for an overnight hotel, or journeys back and forth up the motorway. You know, you've got to think of these logistical things for people who would actually visit at the circuit.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, I think it's good we've got 2 races on a Sunday. Some people could just say, why didn't they just scrap the Saturday race? Or if they want 3 races, put them all on the Sunday. Part of me has to feel that Dorna, having put one on a Saturday, could they admit defeat in a way? Would it be looking like they've admitted a defeat by taking it off the Saturday?
Yeah.
Then again, their argument, to be fair to Dorna, is Saturday race wasn't an error, but what was an error was taking one off Sunday. So in response to that, now they've put one more on Sunday and maintain the Saturday race. Now you could say, and perhaps it would be a point, that it might be better to have the sprint race on the Saturday and not on the Sunday, but it is what it is at the end of the day. I'm going to try and enjoy it for what it is. We certainly don't have a say as to what the final result is. I think it's great from a general point of view. I don't know what you think, but the fact we've got 3 races is good. It's going to be interesting. It's going to make the weekend dynamic quite different now, because if somebody crashes out of that second race, it's not going to wreck the weekend, but it will definitely complicate the weekend, because there's not too much time to get your bike repaired. Then again, that was always a problem anyway, wasn't it, with 2 races on a Sunday?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Who knows? Jonathan Rea and Marco Melandri, I can say that at testing in Jerez in January, they were very annoyed by the fact that points are given for the sprint race.
Yeah, I did see an article. I think, I don't know if it was you or somebody else did on Melandri about that. And I do agree with him in a way.
Well, Dorna's response again would be, well, it's half the racing laps for half the points. And thank goodness we haven't got into a silly situation where we've got half points, because that would be ridiculous. But instead of 25, they've put it down to 12. So they've halved it and rounded it down. So from that point of view, it sort of makes sense. But then other people are saying, if it's a qualifying race, why are you giving points? Isn't it just to decide the grid? Anyway, it is what it is. It's certainly different. It's never happened before. Do I think it's actually going to change a major result in the championship over the course of what is now 39 races? That's a hell of a lot of races for us, which is good, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be different. I don't think it will, really. I mean, if you're Jonathan Rea, I don't think you'd be panicking too much, would you? Because let's just say, in theory, you're on pole position on Saturday. That puts you on pole position for the Saturday race 1 and for the Sunday qualifying race. Therefore, if he wins that, he's on pole again for the third race. And even if he doesn't, he's still right up there. That second race grid deciding situation won't compromise a rider as badly as it would have done last year. When, if you won race 1 as it was then, you were put to 9th on the grid for the second race. Now, that top 9 will just start in the positions they finished the qualifying race, if I'm not confusing you anymore by trying to explain it. But do you know what I mean? They've got rid of the reverse grid thing. So that should actually help Jonathan Rea, really. They just need to be careful, of course, that they don't have an incident in that second race and end up 10th on the grid for the third race, the second Sunday race. I don't think it's really going to change the championship too dramatically. It will, though, make that second race, Ryan, is going to be potentially absolute chaos, isn't it?
It will.
We're not going to have tyre wear as an element as such. And another thing that is interesting is that it's not 10 laps based on the circuit length. It's 10 laps regardless of the track. So Laguna Seca is the shortest circuit on the calendar. 10 laps of Laguna is going to go by a lot quicker than 10 laps of Qatar, the longest circuit. So who knows? I mean, who knows? But I'm just interested to know, why do you feel it's not, maybe it's a bit pointless? The sprint race. I
mean, as a spectator, it's obviously good because you get an extra 20, 30 minutes of bikes on track. But I think it's just because I know when they were first talking about 3 races, all the riders and teams weren't happy because, it's extra bits and bobs that you've, and then if you crash and destroy the bike completely because of the one bike rule.
That's true.
You could miss out. Say if Jonathan Rea crashed in the sprint race, he could then miss out on what would be not very good at maths, 37 points in the 2 races. Yeah. So that side of things is where I'm a bit unsure on it. But as a spectator, which I am, I'm looking forward to having another set of races, sort of thing.
No, I know what you mean, and it's a good point. And certainly, I think that's where Dorna's made it quite clear in the last few years, the organisers of the championship, that they're seeing this more as entertainment, aren't they, than anything else. Now, some of the teams and riders don't like that. We said, look, we're not animals in a circus. This isn't supposed to be an entertainment thing. But at the end of the day, I don't know what other people think. I'd be interested to know. But in my opinion, it is entertainment because the riders are there to entertain. It is a show. Of course, it needs to be safe. And that's sometimes where you do have these arguments when people start saying, well, they're playing around with our lives, they're playing around with our safety. Yeah. But without sounding callous and cold-hearted, it's an extremely dangerous sport anyway. But it is true, of course, that when you've got a rider in a pack in a 10-lap sprint race, there is going to be the possibility of having an incident there, just like there always is. But it's going to be 10 riders locked together.
It's going to be
10 laps with a group locked together, and there's going to be people going hell for leather, taking risks.
Yeah.
We saw this at Phillip Island last year, didn't we, when the race was split into two with the pit stop. That's why the regular front runners, some of them, will be a little bit apprehensive, I think, about this. But we'll see.
It's going to be exactly like a little Moto3 race. Everybody,
very much
everybody
so.
going for it.
Yeah, which is great in some ways, isn't it? I think it's going to throw up some different race winners, certainly some different podium finishers. And then, of course, it means those people are going to be on the front row or the second row, depending on where they finish, for the second feature race, if you like, the last race on the Sunday. The smartest man, as ever, Ryan, will win. It's as simple as that. The smartest man will win. And if that means dropping back to, let's say, a 5th or 6th place in the sprint race on Saturday, doesn't matter too much. You're still on row 2 for the final race of the weekend. And because they're giving less points away, fewer points for the sprint race, you won't have lost quite so much. The focus, as ever, for the riders has to be score as many points as possible over the course of 3 races. It doesn't mean you have to win all 3, but don't forget the general weekend score. That's the crucial thing here.
Yeah. Right, sticking with kind of the schedule, but we'll kind of go to where the races will take place, the calendar, because obviously Bruno returned in 2018. That's now been taken off the calendar and replaced with Jerez that returns, which I'm proud about. I'm happy that Jerez is back because, it is an iconic circuit. And also, there was a bit of debate whether or not Donington Park would happen, Laguna Seca. They're all back on the calendar for 2019, which is good because the last couple of years at Laguna's been quite a good race. Donington obviously got a mixed result, and also the weather can really play a part. And then Jerez, like I say, it's an iconic circuit for bike racing.
Yeah, Jerez, the issue we have in Jerez is the crowd numbers are too low, quite frankly. But hopefully with Alvaro Bautista back now, and we know he's had some support from Dorna to get onto the grid. They're backing it. They're trying to push it more in Spain.
Yeah.
Let's hope the crowd numbers do go up. And Alvaro Bautista said that to me in an interview, actually, when I was at the Jerez test. The line was quite nice. He said, let's fill the grandstand with fans. So I'm sure some people would have been a bit cynical about that. But let's see. Let's hope he's right. Let's hope he does. To be fair, Jerez was quite busy when we were last there. That main grandstand was pretty full in 2017 when we were last there. So let's see about that. That obviously fell off the calendar for a year, as you say. They've got it back on again. Brno was a sort of stopgap there in the meantime on a 1-year contract, and it wasn't renewed, quite frankly. Let's hope maybe it might be again in the future because it's a classic venue. And to be honest, it was the most newsworthy weekend of the whole season last year, wasn't it, Brno?
Yeah.
But Laguna's still on. That's great news because it was off the calendar for a while. It looked like we weren't going to have a Laguna.
Yeah.
Donington is on, as you've said, and that was something where MSV, Stuart Higgs, Jonathan Palmer, they met with Carmelo Espeleta, the Dorna CEO in Madrid last year, and they said, look, we need 2 races on a Sunday. It might work to have a split race format in other countries, but not in the British market. And to be fair to Dorna, they've actually brought 2 races back on a Sunday, haven't they?
Yeah.
And kept a Saturday race. So great news Donington's still on. It would have been an absolute travesty not to have a British round. Of course, it all began there back in 1988.
Yeah. Just kind of going a little bit off topic, but there was a chance that South Africa was coming on the calendar.
Yes.
What's your in your opinion, would you have liked to have seen South Africa on the calendar, or are you happy as it is? Because I know for you, you've got to travel around a lot.
Well, the first thing regarding travel is Donington and Laguna, as it pans out, are back-to-back, and that's going to be a heck of a logistical challenge. Not so much for personnel. People can get on a plane, can't they? But for the equipment, because it's not mainland Europe, it's the UK. So they obviously have to get everything onto the jumbo jets down to Heathrow, I guess. But East Midlands is right next to Donington Park, but I guess it would go from Heathrow in that case. As a bigger airport. Who knows? Maybe East Midlands. I could be wrong there. But whatever. They've got to get it all from the UK. This is my point. To the States. So that's going to be a big logistical challenge. South Africa was an interesting one. In some ways, to call something a world championship, you do need to be all over the world, don't you?
Yeah.
So it would have been nice from that point of view to have a race on the African continent. And it would have been a real coup for World Superbikes, considering we haven't got MotoGP there at the moment. Haven't got Formula One on the African continent either at the moment. Of course, there have been races in those championships before at Kyalami. it was all a bit clouded, though, in the end. It looked like it was going to happen, then it looked like it wasn't. Some people said, no, that was never going to happen. I think the general gist of the story was, without getting into too many complicated details, the circuit and the promoter were different people, so it wasn't going to be the circuit itself that was actually negotiating to promote that event. So it would get quite messy.
Yeah.
I'm no expert on these things, Ryan, if I'm honest with you. But it would basically mean you'd have the promoter of the championship, Dorna Sports, in conjunction with the FIM, more or less, but mostly Dorna, involved with a promoter, which in turn is also talking to the circuit. For whatever reason, it didn't come to fruition. Whether it was even close to happening or not, realistically, who knows? But it was on a provisional calendar. There's no doubt about that last year, and it didn't happen in the end. Who knows? I mean, you get situations like this. We've had it a few times. Russia had a contract where it had to keep reappearing on the calendar for a while, and everyone really knew it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
India was another one that came and went. We had talks about Chile. There were talks about Chile, and who knows whether that might happen in the next few years. But things like India, Russia, it's silly in a way because it makes the championship look a bit silly, the fact that it's put on there provisionally. But of course, it's all money, isn't it? Northern Ireland was another one.
Yeah,
we were going to be having a round in Northern Ireland. That was supposed to be happening this year, wasn't it? But that didn't happen in the end. Unfortunately, it's how the sport works, and it's the same in F1. It's the same in bikes as well, that they put contracts together with these places before they're actually built. So usually, not always, but often, the promoter will get the money for a year. And then, of course, if it can't happen, or the construction or the local government or whoever's involved in that project can't build the circuit, of course, the promoter still got a year's worth of money. And, of course, it's a lot more complicated than that. But that's why you see a lot of situations like that where races are announced and then they don't happen. But to the uninitiated, who don't really follow the sport that closely, it must make it look a little bit silly. Let's not be too naive here to think that, people are reading headlines like World Superbikes is going to South Africa, World Superbikes is going to Northern Ireland, and then it doesn't happen. People must be thinking, what's going on? But I mean, what do we know?
on the channel, I think it was Finland MotoGP. They announced that it was going to be
another one.
It was going to was it 2019 or 2020? He announced it was going to be on the calendar. So I made the video. And then a couple of years later, I get called liar and all sorts down in the comments. So
and there you go. And of course, that's not because you were a liar, because it was announced, and then it was announced for one season, and it was put back to the following season. I've got contacts who are riders who live in Finland, not too far from the track, and they've been there, and they said, "There's no way this is going to happen on time." Hopefully, it does happen, because it would be amazing to have a Finnish Grand Prix. At the moment, though, nothing. Who knows? No. Time will tell.
Right, we'll stick with the changes, but now we'll talk about the riders and the manufacturers, because Ducati and BMW have new bikes. Well, Kawasaki have a new bike as well. But the biggest change is the new V4R that Chaz Davies, Alvaro Bautista, and Eugene Lavity will ride. I don't think I've missed anybody else off on that list.
Michael Ruben Rinaldi.
Yep, Rinaldi, good shout.
Just checked that in the folders, even though there's nothing in there.
What do you think of the V4 then? Because you've only really got Bautista and kind of Rinaldi. Lavity's not had as much time on the bike compared to the factory riders, because they had their test back in Aragon at the end of, I think it was in November last year, and then also a little private one at Jerez. Chaz is obviously injured as well. He's still recovering. So there's not too much of a reference point, as Bautista's still getting used to the Superbike compared to the MotoGP bike. Obviously, you've been there and you've been behind the scenes. You've seen what's happening. Do you think Ducati, the V4, can beat the Kawasaki?
Honestly speaking, do I think the V4 Ducati is a good bike? Yes, of course I do. Honestly speaking, do I think it's going to win the World Superbike Championship this year? No, in a word, Ryan. Because, it might be next year. That could be a different matter. But right now, I think you'd have to be pretty naive, generally speaking, to think that anyone can come into World Superbikes right now and beat Jonathan Rea, Perariba, the Kawasaki, which isn't a new bike as such. It's a new engine and it's got new parts, but it's essentially the same bike, the double R they've had since 2016. Of course, it's changed as regulations have changed. The revs have been turned down. Now they've gone back up again, of course, because they've re-homologated the latest version of the road bike. So they've gained an extra 600 revs. So I'm not sure how Scott Smart and the FIM are going to play that, whether they're going to bring that back down again. We'll have to get James Whittam on the case, won't we, at Eurosport when we get to Australia next week. But actually, you'll see an interview coming up very soon in Motorcycle News in which Chaz Davis has been very honest. I chatted with him from here at home the other night, actually, on the phone. And he said, look, quite honestly, I'm not where I want to be with this bike at the moment. He said, you get a new bike, there's loads and loads and loads to learn. But as you said, he's not where he wants to be physically. And then once you get to that last second and half second and quarter of a second, you need to find even finer, smaller advantages to get to where you want to be. At the moment, they're taking big chunks off the lap times because it's a new bike. Bautista's a rookie. Of course, he's not a rookie rider, but he's a rookie superbike rider. So he's got new geometry. He's got new Pirelli tyres, much softer tyres.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the superbikes are less powerful than the MotoGP bikes, which is why you can run softer tyres. But even so, all of this stuff is new for Alvaro Bautista. And then, as we've already said, you've got Michael Ruben Rinaldi's replaced Xavi Forés, who's gone off to Honda in BSB. So Rinaldi's now on the Barney Ducati, another V4R. As you said, Ryan, Eugene Laverty's on the Go 11 V4R. But another thing that's interesting is that all three teams are running different suspensions. So you've got Öhlins on the Aruba bikes, Showa on the Barney bike, and Bitubo, a smaller Italian company, on the Go 11 bike. And I've spoken to a few people about this because my initial thought, and I'm not technical, I'm not a rider, I'm not technical, I'm no James Whittam. However, I did think, wouldn't it make sense if they are going to be hoping to develop the bike together and share some of the data for everyone to be on the same stuff? It's not that simple, though, really, because Go 11 already had a contract with Bitubo. I've spoken to Dennis Sacchetti, who's the team manager of Go 11, and he said we did have a contract with Öhlins as well because we've had to pay for both to do a bit of a comparison. They reckon they'll get more dedicated support with Bitubo because they'll have 2 engineers working only with Eugene Laverty. So that's the way Go 11's going. Other people are saying it's a budgetary thing, and yes, of course, it would make more sense to have everybody on the same bikes. But then comes the question, how much are those teams really going to be sharing data anyway? And you have to think that at the end of the day, Go 11 with Eugene Laverty is a fully independent team. Yes, they're receiving some support from Ducati itself, and let's hope for the good of the championship he's going to receive more rather than less, because we want as many riders up there as possible, do we not? But I just don't think they're in a position yet to be able to challenge for the championship. Chaz Davis's injuries are not helping. November 2017, thinking back now, he had a bad incident when I think the brakes failed in testing in Jerez, turn 1. Yeah. Threw himself off, wrecked his shoulder. That's pretty much sorted now, we believe. But now he's aggravated his back, and he said he's pretty sure it wasn't due to an incident that happened at Jerez. I spoke with the track marshals and the people at the circuit there. I was able to chat with them in Spanish, fortunately, and they said he just low-sided going into the Cito Pons corner. So I honestly do believe that Chaz Davis doesn't think the crash itself has aggravated that back injury, which we believe comes from an injury from the past, from his discs being slightly damaged, and then that activates the muscle, causes a lot of pain. Yeah. Now, whether he twinged it, he said it was the same day it happened, so I don't know whether it was trying to lift the bike out the gravel. This is me saying this, not him. Or whether it's just by coincidence something's gone because he's been doing a lot of strenuous exercise, whether it's riding or training, more so than over the last few weeks. Whatever the reason, it's affected his pre-season. He lost half a day in Jerez. It was still playing up in Portimao. And I think the big loser really is Chaz Davis and Ducati, but it's the World Superbike Championship itself. We need Chaz Davis up there at the front of the field. Would it be great if Jonathan Rea took a 5th title? Yes, it would be tremendous, wouldn't it? Imagine a rider winning a 5th title. It's never happened before.
In a row as well.
In a row as well. Nobody had ever won 3 in a row, let alone 4, which he's already done. So I think it would be tremendous to see a 5th title. However, it would be nice if it was done in a way that it was competitive. Yeah. And we didn't just have one rider rushing off into the sunset. And I don't just mean that if it's Jonathan Rea, whoever it is. Because generally, I think it's fair to say we don't want a dominated championship, do we? No. We want it to be close. It doesn't matter who wins, but we want it to be close. So, unfortunately, I have to say, sorry for such a long answer to a short question, but I don't think that Ducati is going to be contending this year for the title. If I'm wrong, I'll be delighted, but I think they're going to be up there for podiums, wins. Don't forget Bautista needs to learn the circuits on Superbike spec machines as well. Some of the circuits he doesn't even know at all. Places like Imola, he won't have really raced there before. No. So let's see. I don't know. At the moment, on paper, I feel the closest challenger. And I thought this at the end of last year. And I think the way things have gone now, it looks like it is the case. Let's see. Yamaha should be the closest challengers to Kawasaki at this point. Let's see.
Yeah. I agree with you. The way Alex and also Michael has been riding, but also Cortese as well, and Melandri on the GRT bike. Cortese has been very impressive. Obviously, he's a rookie DX Supersport champion.
Yeah.
That was my next question. GRT Yamaha. Will they, in your opinion, where do you think they're going to finish? Because Melandri, obviously, ex-MotoGP rider, he's going to want to run at the front, and at the moment, that Yamaha is not responding the way that he wants it to do with his riding style. So he's got a steep learning curve, and a big mountain to climb in a small time period before it gets going.
Well, yeah, true. We've still got Phillip Island first, though, and you never know what's going to happen there. Look what happened there last year. It's interesting, though, because he did do a bit of a U-turn. He started by saying the bike suits him, then he said, no, it doesn't suit me. It does make you wonder how much of that is the mind game thing going on, doesn't it? Because Melandri's I like Marco Melandri, actually. When you talk to most of his former teammates, they don't seem to be big fans of the guy. Now, I'm not saying he's not political inside a team. I've never been his teammate. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. However, at the same time, you do hear riders bitching about one another sometimes, and sometimes it's simply because they've been beaten by that man. And certainly Marco Melandri's beaten a few people over the years. He's won more races now than Max Biaggi, so he's the most successful Italian World Superbike rider ever in terms of race wins, that is. He's not won a title, but in terms of race wins. I think the GRT team are going to be right there. I imagine some people in the Pata team are a little bit nervous about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree that all of the Yamaha people would rather have 4 Yamahas up there at the front in comparison with 2 Yamahas or 1 Yamaha fighting with a Kawasaki. Of course they do. But at the same time, does Alex Lowe's want to be sharing data and being beaten by Marco Melandri? I don't think so. Neither does Michael van der Mark. And neither will Cortese or Melandri themselves. They're all out there for themselves. Every rider on that grid and every driver on any grid, and whether it's cars or bikes, is selfish by nature. The best ones always are, and that's why people employ them. They have to have that single-mindedness, because otherwise they wouldn't achieve what they do achieve. And often they'll mellow, won't they, with age when they retire, and you hear them saying, you hear it said by people, I can't believe how it is a selfish job by nature, isn't it? You have to give up so much family life. You've got to get up everything. They'll be competitive with anything they do. And I do think it's going to be interesting to see the fight between not just Van der Mark and Lowe's this year, but the other two as well, on the other side of the garage, if you like. But it's a completely different garage. It's a different team setup. Now, they've been talking about sharing data, Ryan, and from what we can gather, the journalists at the test, the riders won't be sitting down and saying, oh, do you want to go through? Oh, look at this. I was braking here, and here's my throttle trace and all that kind of thing. That's not going to happen when they get the data plugged in, the data acquisition, as it's called. But the engineers will be using the data, and they'll be trying to improve the bike with info from Lowe's, Van der Mark, Cortese, and Melandri. Well, I agree with you. I think Melandri is going to be... Well, first of all, he knows he's only got a year or two left in his career. He said that himself. He's not the youngest rider in the field anymore. He's the oldest rider, actually, to be precise. He is the oldest man on the grid. So he doesn't give a damn, does he, about anyone else? Let's be honest. And that's going to be great, really, for us. And I think Cortese is going to surprise, because he's coming in really with not no expectation, but lower expectation than people like Van der Mark and Lowe's, naturally, as you would expect. He's never ridden anything as big as a superbike before, because he's never raced in MotoGP. So he's got nothing to lose to an extent, has he? And I think he will surprise, because of all of the 4 Yamaha riders, Cortese is the one with the least expectation, I think it's fair to say. And often in that situation, that guy ends up coming out on top. So I think it could be a classic, actually, from that point of view. And I think from the number of potential race winners and podium finishers, especially considering we've got this new sprint race, it could be very high this year. I'm not saying Jonathan Rea won't win the championship, because I think he will. He's my tip. But I think in terms of individual winners and podium finishers along the way, we're going to have a lot.
I agree with you. Pretty much everything you've said from the start there.
Very much. The checks in the post, right?
We'll go back to Kawasaki, because Jonathan Rea's got a new teammate this year. The main idea is that Leon Haslam is kind of keeping the seat warm for Top Rack. But my view is Leon will be another Tom Sykes. He'll be thereabouts, but he won't challenge Jonathan too much. I think Phillip Island obviously won his penultimate race win in World Superbikes was at Phillip Island on the Aprilia. So I think, and I know he said that to you, I believe, as well in an interview, that he feels like that will be the track. But places like Donington Park, challenging for podiums on wildcards, but in the overall championship, I don't think he will be able to challenge Jonathan. I don't know about you, but that's...
I agree. I agree again. There we go again. Great minds think alike. But no, I agree with you. And I was doing the Full Throttle podcast for Eurosport the other day with James Whittam. That's coming out soon, so keep an eye for that. I had to get that plug in as well, by the way. Sorry, Ryan. But to be fair, Whit, who knows Leon Haslam extremely well, of course, he agrees. He'll be saying more about that when the podcast comes out. And again, that's not a disservice to Leon Haslam, for goodness sake. Jonathan Rea is certainly one of the greats, and possibly the great of World Superbike. Certainly statistically, he is the greatest of all time. And then whether he is your greatest of all time is opinion, isn't it? At the end of the day, you can't get everyone to agree on everything. So for somebody to come in, for anybody to come in at the moment and beat Jonathan Rea on that Kawasaki with the same crew chief, with the same mechanics, with the same setup around him, and all the data they've got, even though some of the regulations have changed a bit, but you know what I mean, with basically all the data from previous years, should anyone be expected to come in and be able to beat him? Do I think Haslam will have a better season than Tom Sykes? Because you were touching on that a moment ago. Yes, I do. I think I'd be surprised if he didn't. I don't think he'll finish as many points behind percentage-wise. I can't say as many points now because we've got different number of races. So that could change things a bit.
Yeah.
But if you work it out as a percentage of the points of the two last year, I certainly think Leon Haslam's going to be a lot closer. I think he'll win more races than Tom Sykes did last year, which was only one at Assen, which Tom Sykes would be the first man in the world to admit that was not a very great season by his standards. World champion of the past. He had a lot going on at home, though, so let's not forget that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, to achieve what he did last year was pretty good, considering all the stress off the track, which ultimately did affect his performances on the track.
Definitely,
he's a very good guy, and he said that himself. And whether Haslam is keeping the seat warm for Toprak in 2020, who knows? I mean, he might be. There's a feeling that, you know, Toprak may have already had a contract before and then they didn't sign it, or something went wrong and they decided to go back against it. We know Kawasaki wanted Toprak to improve on his English because the marketing and corporate side of things, the PR thing is so important these days.
Yeah.
Then again, if Leon Haslam comes out of the blocks and wins a few races this year, let's just say in theory, pushes Jonathan Rea for the title or at least finishes second in the championship, why would they want to change him for the year after? So who knows?
Yeah.
Toprak's going to be there, though, so he needs to keep an eye over his shoulder, does Haslam. But on the other hand, he can't think about that. He's got to go out there and race for himself, which is, I'm sure, what he's going to do anyway. This is a magnificent opportunity for Leon Haslam on that Kawasaki. I mean, wow. I mean, where's it come from in a way? If you look at it, really, I think you have to remember what people were thinking at the time to really analyse something properly. And when you go back to the end of 15, you said the penultimate win he had was Phillip Island. Then, of course, he won the last race of that season in Qatar.
Yep.
So the last full season Leon Haslam had, he won at the first round, he won at the last round. He did have a very bad smash at Imola, which hurt him later on that year, and that affected him more than people think. But at the time, we thought, oh, crikey, Leon Haslam's lost his ride with Aprilia. Aprilia's pretty much gone. He's off the grid. Oh, he's gone back to BSB. Is this a backward step? Of course, it wasn't. It was more a sideways step than anything.
Yeah.
Missed out on the first title, but actually scored more points than anyone over the whole season, but missed out in the showdown. Missed out with the horrible crash at Brands Hatch in the second season. Won in the third. And would you believe it, he's now got this new relationship with Kawasaki, which puts him in a perfect position because of their relationship at Suzuka as well. In fact, it was very much due to that and the relationship he has with the Japanese side of Kawasaki to become Jonathan Rea's teammate in the World Superbike Championship in 2019. Who the heck would have believed that was going to happen? So Haslam's got this great opportunity. It may well be his last, and he will be going for it. And he knows, and Jonathan Rea knows as well, they will both get stuck in. And if it comes down to a last lap, neither of those two will give up. They are good friends off the track. But that doesn't count for anything, does it, when you're coming down to a last corner and you're both headed for that apex together? Will they collide? Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised. I hope they don't for their sake, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. And that's going to be interesting, actually, to see, you know, how that relationship fares over the course of a season.
It'll be interesting as well if it's Rea, Haslam and Melandri going into the final corner at Donington Park.
Maybe none of them will come out. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I know where you're going with that. Yeah.
Right, we'll stick with Tom Sykes. You mentioned him earlier because he's on a BMW for 2019 alongside the final ever Superstock 1000 champion, Marcus Reiterberger. My understanding is, I'm not sure how true this is, but Sykes wasn't on a full Superbike bike, and he seems quick. And he said in an interview, I'm not sure if it was with Motorcycle News or Bike Sport News, that he believes that he can take it to Jonathan Rea. Now things are sorted out at home. He feels comfortable on the bike. It's going to be another story that we've just got to wait to unfold.
Yeah, they're naughty monkeys at BMW, but in a way I love it because it's all this sort of mind games, to use the same word I used before, going on in the background. Because when we were back at Jerez, they weren't telling us the lap times, and they were going around doing this, doing that. And then apparently when they did put transponders on, which was to make sure their names at least appeared in the final classification. So, you know, if it's going to print in newspapers and things like that, their names would appear there. But the feeling then was they were actually rolling off the throttle and slowing down. Now, whether that's true, who knows? But I got that from a pretty good source. So I think it probably is true. They're trying to disguise their lap times. In a way, it doesn't mean much, does it? Because it doesn't really matter, because it all starts at Phillip Island anyway. You don't start scoring points in testing. But he does seem very, very confident, as Tom Sykes. And you never know with Tom. He's a naughty little boy, isn't he, at times? He can play us around, and he comes out with funny jibes and jokes, which is great, actually. I think it's perfect for the championship. You need people like that. Really good for TV as well, when you see him joking around with Whittam and with Charlie Hiscott on the grid walks and things like that.
And as well, sorry to put in, but
no problem.
Donington, when he was on the stage with Michael Hill doing the paddock show.
Well, I mean, the one and only... He's great value with Michael, isn't he? Because Tom is not afraid to say what he thinks, and I encourage that. So, Tom, if you're watching this, please be more honest about Michael Hill, the one and only white-toothed Michael Hill, on the paddock shows this year. I know Michael's very excited about this.
You're doing a song, aren't you, at Phillip Island, I believe?
No, I don't believe that's true. I don't know where you've got that from. Michael Hill will try his best, I'm sure. Yeah, we were joking actually the other day about, I said I'll sing I Want to Break Free, and now he wants to recreate the video. We've got to be careful, because they were trying to do it last year, and I may have to try and get out quickly. It's a back-to-back though, isn't it, with Laguna? Yeah. That'll be my excuse to get out of Donington really fast this year and stay away from that PTR concert. But no, just back. Michael Hill's a lunatic anyway. Just going back to, only joking, Michael. Just going back to Tom though. I think he's going to have a good season because he's relaxed. And I personally think going into it, the expectation isn't there like it was before. So all the other seasons, well, certainly all the seasons I've commentated on, and basically every season since Tom has been world champion, and even that season itself. So let's say 2013 onwards, he's been viewed as a title contender, at least in theory, going into the season. He's not this year, and I think that will suit him better. He's just on the new BMW. And sort of anything they achieve will be viewed as a good thing, I think. So if he's on the podium in the first race, everyone's going to say, wow, that's amazing. If he's 8th in the first race, he's not going to get a load of criticism. He's going to be saying, you know, we've got a new bike. We're getting more or less where we want to be. Yeah. And then when they do eventually get to the podium, it will be hailed as a great achievement. So from that point of view, Sykes isn't under pressure, is he, this year? He can just go out and enjoy his racing. And I think a relaxed, confident Tom Sykes is a dangerous Tom Sykes. And he will be there at times, and he will be spoiling the party. Reiterberger's a really good peddler as well. He's very loyal to BMW, and they've rewarded him with this. And I think they'll get on quite well as teammates, and there'll be a good little team there. Sean Muir Racing, good outfit anyway. Yeah. So, yeah, let's see. But to really be honest, how close they're going to be, I don't know. But Australia always throws up surprises anyway, doesn't it? Look how many Australia results we've had, which don't really tell the tale of a championship season. But, you know, we'll have plenty of races for telling us who the true form guys are. So let's have chaos in a good way in Australia. Why not?
Yeah. Right. The final team that we'll just quickly talk about, and manufacturer, because there's two teams. Honda. Obviously, Leon Camier, he had a disappointing 2018. He got beaten up at nearly every round you could think of. And he's partnered with Ryuichi Kiyanari, who my understanding is only there because Honda said, we will give you a full factory bike if you put Kyo on the bike. And obviously you mentioned second team, that will be Alessandro Del Bianco, who is another rider who knows how to twist the throttle and could be very exciting to watch in a sprint race.
Yeah, I've just been trying to get to the bottom of this now for all year long so far, speaking with people from the team, speaking with people from the paddock, other riders. Nobody really knows the answer. No one knows exactly what is going on. The thing is that's quite exciting when HRC are normally this quiet, they're normally taking things quite seriously, and they're being very secretive so far.
Yeah.
None of the riders are giving anything away. They're not even speaking to people. I know from speaking to various journalists and other people that Leon Camier is not really answering people's WhatsApp messages, things like that.
Yeah.
That, there might be nothing. And of course, he is a dad now as well. Him and Sarah had a baby last year. So there's a lot going on in Leon Camier's life, without doubt. But there's no doubt about it. The Honda riders have been told, don't say a word until the launch at Phillip Island. That's when they're officially going to launch that project. How HRC is the HRC team. It's something we've been talking about over the off-season since it was announced just after Qatar last year. Of course, tragic that 10 Carter's not on the grid, but they might be back anyway. But as for the Honda team as it is, I think Kianari is obviously a Moriwaki rider in the Japanese Championship. He knows the Pirelli tyres well, so that should help. There's a feeling that they might be developing a new bike for 2020, so he'll be a good development rider, and Camier certainly will be a good development rider if that is the case. They are developing a new bike for the year after, for next year. But quite where the Hondas will be in terms of form, difficult to say. I don't know where they're going to be. They've been doing all their testing in Thailand. Apart from one where they couldn't get through customs, the bike that is, and they were stuck, so they couldn't do any testing that time. There was a rumour they'd been doing some testing in Japan, but I spoke with an HRC spokesperson. They said no, there was nothing in Japan. So from what we're led to believe, officially, they've been testing in Thailand. They've kept away from Aragon, they've kept away from Jerez, they've kept away from Portimao, and all the prying eyes, the other teams, the other riders, the journos, the cameramen, and whoever else may have been around at that point, fans obviously as well. Yeah. There have been some fans at the test, which is good to see, especially Spanish ones for Bautista. Kyo, do I think Ryuichi Kianari is going to be contending for wins this year? Not really. I think he's going to be having to contend for points and top tens if he can. It'd be surprising if it's more, won't it, really? Yeah. He's the second oldest rider on the grid now, just a few months shy of Melandri. If it rains, Kyo's very, very good. Some of the best bike control we've ever seen. I mean, that could be interesting, actually.
I was just thinking, I'm probably going to be well off, but Donington 2008, I want to take a stab at on the hands-free.
I think you might be right, 8 or 9. It was certainly around that time, but it was definitely Donington.
Yeah, that was an incredible lap. So, like you say, in the wet, he'll definitely be there.
Yeah. And then, Dale Bianco, sorry to cut in, Ryan. He's on another bike with Moriwaki traditional colours, blue and yellow, which looks very nice, by the way. That was launched as well. And I'm told by the teams, I'm told by the rider himself that is not an HRC bike. That is a Honda / Altea / Moriwaki machine. If you're confused, you're not the only one. That won't be getting HRC support. But then again, would I be surprised to see a few HRC parts creeping onto that bike and being tested? No, I wouldn't, because it's still the Altea team that's running with HRC and Moriwaki and Honda. So I don't know. It could be fantastic, and let's hope we do have a load of HRC engineers in the garage at Phillip Island. Let's hope that it is a proper HRC effort, because if it is, they will be taking it very seriously indeed. Midori Moriwaki does not take prisoners either. So I've heard. Lovely, lovely person. I've not had the pleasure of speaking to her myself properly yet. But she'll be in there on a serious note. He's not here to mess around.
No.
So it's going to be really interesting. You've got BMWs, Ducatis, Yamahas, Kawasaki's, Hondas, all running factory teams in essence. And that's good. That cannot be a bad thing, surely.
No, definitely not. I think we've pretty much covered everything. We kind of
we missed anyone?
Tied the 2019 preview in with all the rider changes and team changes, so that was good. Got 2 birds with 1 stone there. Right, so as Greg mentioned, Phillip Island coming up in 2 weeks' time. You can obviously watch that on Eurosport, where Greg will be joined by Whittam, I believe.
Yep, that's correct.
Quick question: will Freddie Spencer be back this year?
Freddie, I'm afraid it's bad news for Freddie Spencer fans, but he won't be with us this year because he's gone off to MotoGP to do his job with Dorna. So I think, there was maybe the possibility of a few rounds, but with the way the calendars have worked out and the fact that BSB doesn't clash with World Superbikes apart from once this year, which is Portimao and Alton Park. So we'll have James Whittam, I am delighted to say, with us, although I love Freddie as well, of course, but we'll have James Whittam with us at every single round this year, apart from Portimao. For Portimao, watch this space, but I can confirm, unfortunately for Freddie fans, Freddie won't be with us this year, but I do wish him very good luck with his new job in MotoGP. I'll be interested to see, actually, how that works out, because Freddie's such a nice guy.
Yeah.
what's he going to be like when he's in a situation where he, perhaps has to put the blame on somebody in a riding incident? Then again, there is no one really better at reading an incident, as you'll know from his commentary and the practice sessions in particular, than Freddie Spencer. Not just from a mental point of view, but he can just analyse so much what's going on. And he'll be fair with people as well. That's what I think will be good about Freddie in that role.
Yeah.
He will be fair, and if he needs to, let someone off, he'll probably do that too, but maybe not twice.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so Greg, thank you for joining us. As I said, you can watch Greg on TV on Eurosport in 2 weeks' time. Like I say, on Eurosport. And we shall be doing the normal World Superbike Let's Talk as well on the channel. So if you want to just, if you missed a weekend, you can catch up here on the channel. And obviously as well on social media from both of us. We will both be tweeting out throughout the weekend. So Greg, thank you for joining us. And
thanks, Ryan.
We shall speak soon, hopefully in the paddock sometime. And thank you for watching at home. Make sure, like I said, you check out Greg down in the description. Subscribe if you're new around here, and we will see you guys next time. Until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye.